As a fellow member and victim of Black fatigue, I want to raise my right hand in solidarity to all the other Black people who have stood up and said that they too are tired of all the foolishness.
First of all, I would just like to say that, when you playing for the other team, you leave one team and you go and you play for another team, you don't get to tell the team that you left, how to play the game. See, I think it's kind of, it's an insult, when you talk about Black issues and you talk about Black fatigue and you speak about how Black people act and how embarrassed you are of Black people when you sleeping with the enemy. That's just cold-blooded. That's an insult to all Black people. When you sleeping with the Caucasian nation and you feel like you have the right to speak about Black people's issues and how Black people act in society. So now that we got that out of the way, I've been hearing a lot about this Black fatigue stuff. Black fatigue, Black fatigue. That's just another way of white folks telling us, that they can't stand our guts. That's all that is code word for, hey, those bunch of N-words over there. That's all it is. That's all it is. They tired of us, how we carry ourselves in public. And this is their code word for this is just another word for the N-word. This is just another substitute for the N-word. But think about it. What about white fatigue? Because we have a lot to say about, how white people act in public. We have a lot to say about how white people treat us, as a people in this country. You see, because, when we came out of captivity, in this country, it only took us a few years, before we were able to establish our own towns, our own cities, our own schools, our own hospitals, even our own banks, you see. And what did white people do? They came in and they destroyed everything that we had. We were minding our own business. You wouldn't be fatigued if you had just left us alone. See, if you're fatigued, why did you even come over here? We were dwelling in peace over here in this country. We had our land to ourselves. We had our buffalo. We had all this land to ourselves. And then you showed up, you see. If you are so fatigued, why don't you pack up and go back to your country? Go back to your caves and your mountains. Go back to your Caucasus Mountains. You see, just leave. See, the difference between, how we carry ourselves in public, don't get me wrong. I mean, can we do better? Yes, we can do better. We can take the shower caps off before we leave the house. We can take the house sandals off. The pajama pants. The men, we can raise our pants up, put a belt on. We can do all these things. But one thing about it is, the way we behave and carry ourselves, it doesn't have a direct impact on white people. You see, when white people, their actions, in public, their actions against Black people, it always ends up in life and death situations. You see, our actions, they don't cause you any harm. You see, you can walk around freely in your neighborhoods. You can walk around freely in your streets. on your job, and you can go to your banks and cash your checks without, having cops getting called on you. You can hop in your car with your family and drive, to the beach, and you don't have to worry about, being profiled and pulled out of your car and tased and shot. You see, that's the difference between what you call black fatigue and what we call white fatigue. You see, your troubles, you don't end up on the news. You don't end up on the news, because of the way we carry ourselves in public. You don't end up in a morgue somewhere.